What is going on, boys and girls? It's me, Ben DP, been here with another Ben Meets for you now. It's been a little bit of a while, so apologies for the delay. But if you are new to the channel, make sure you smash that subscribe button. If you're new to my Spotify, make sure you smash that follow button too. Without any further ado, we're going to dive into the episode. Today we've got a very, very special guest. It's the writer of the mockumentary podcast, The Offensive. It's basically a podcast about a fictional football team. It's Joel Emery. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, mate. Thanks for having me, Ben.
Now, thank you for coming on, buddy. Now, rather than me doing you a disservice and explaining your show extremely bad, can you give the guys a brief introduction about what Ashwood City is?
The Offensive is a mockumentary podcast that follows a fictional Premier League team called Ashwood City. Runs in sync with the Premier League season. So they'll play Arsenal one weekend, they'll play Bournemouth the next weekend, and so on and so on and so on. And every Monday morning you get to hear behind the scenes at a boardroom level the inner turmoil of the club.
One of the things I love about the podcast is it doesn't focus predominantly on the footballers, as we've seen with Footballers' Wives and Dream Team back in the day. As you said, it focuses on the boardroom. It focuses on how the workers of the club go, whether it be takeovers or whether it be transfer days, or one of my personal favourites, the whole transfer saga where Woody had all the scouts in the boardroom discussing players they were looking at. It's a funny podcast. It's a comedy. There's a bit of swearing in there. So if you love a bit of swearing language like I do, then you will love the Offensive podcast. So make sure you download it on Spotify or your good podcast and some bad podcast app. Give it a download, give it a follow, and also make sure you follow the Twitter. You're Ashwood City, with all the description. Ashwood City, you're the Offensive podcast as well. But honestly, I promise you will love it. You won't be disappointed. Now, in terms of the podcast, the Offensive, Ashwood City, how did the whole podcast come about?
The idea had been bubbling around for ages, and I mean really ages, probably 10 years ago, where we basically said, just imagine the thick of it, but it's not set at number 10 or whatever. It's set at a elite level football club. And then I ended up working in football, or football broadcasting at least, and was delighted to hear they actually all speak like characters do in the thick of it, like really foul mouthed, really cruel to each other, a lot of mind games, a lot of power grabs and all that kind of thing. So then I kind of got my arse in gear to make a video demo of it. I made it. I hated it. I wouldn't say I hated it, actually. I didn't love it. And then I just basically sulked for a couple of years, swallowed the cost of it. And then somebody read the script once and said there's no visual gags in it. I don't know whether they were criticizing it or something. And then as soon as they said that, I thought, well, I should probably make a podcast then. Conveniently, Adam, who's been involved with The Offensive since it first started, was making a podcast of his own sort of acting career and his friends in the industry. So I basically picked his brain, and then we gave birth to it 9 months later in the August of 2018.
The podcast is somewhat of a hit. I mean, it's gone down very, very well. There's a big review on TalkSport not too long ago as well. I mean, in terms of the podcast, one of the things I love about it, as you said, it follows real life football. So, for example, with the whole coronavirus, COVID-19, you guys have incorporated that into your storylines. Now, when it comes to things like the coronavirus or the sex orgy by Kyle Walker, among others, I mean, it must be hard to pre-write a show when you're going alongside with the real life story. So, just how much does things like the coronavirus and Kyle Walker's sex orgies and Jack Grealish drink driver, how much does that affect your story? How much does that affect your future plans for the show as well?
It's as much as like a blessing as it is a curse, really, because sometimes you can be scratching your head about what are we going to do an episode about, and then someone will throw a cabbage at Steve Bruce and you'll go, brilliant. Let's have an episode where, something like that happens. And whilst people might think, oh, that's great, how clever, they're parodying something that happened really recently, it's actually a bit of a cop-out, really, because we couldn't think of anything and then something in real life happened. So that's the upside. The downside is, we did an episode a few weeks ago, probably a few months ago now, where we had fully cut it together, and then City announced that they'd been banned from the Champions League, and it was like, oh shit. Then we had to try and work out how, especially when we deal with a show that deals with boardroom level football and sort of corruptness, that has to feature. So, it sometimes it really, really, really helps us, and at other times it's a pain in the arse.
Does it mean that your scripts because I'm guessing you have a plan, start, middle, and end of what you want each season to look like? Does it affect your start, middle, and end of your writing process? For example, the whole Man City actually transfer ban, and the ban from Europe meant that we had to then bring the storyline with Patrick, where he had to deal with the UEFA League, Europa League, all that sort of stuff, investigating him. Does that affect your future plans for the podcast?
Yeah, it does a bit. So we kind of used it as a little injection into our lead character's own drama and the sort of corrupt schemes that he's running that would have, real world effects on the football industry. So we kind of used the City thing to sort of prod that story along a little bit further. So, that was good in that respect. I would say season 1, there wasn't a huge sort of overarching story plan as such. And I think that's why people liked it, because it was so chaotic. It felt like real football. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if there was last minute goals week in, week out, and there was flourishing relationships, and the manager was really connecting with the team and that, you'd go, this is not real. But what happened in season 1 is the club went through 3 managers. They nearly got relegated. They had a positive spell that came from nowhere. They were involved in a pre-season orgy. There was all these sort of more of a patchwork of things, and then eventually a sort of story came out at the end of it. Season 2, different kettle of fish completely, where I am dealing with a bigger story that I'm trying to write to the end of the season, and then coronavirus comes along and all that kind of thing, which is just something you've got to deal with. So yeah, real world football helped a lot in season 1 at that patchwork kind of style that I think people liked, just reminded them of the chaos. We'll always get tweets like, have you based this on Newcastle? Have you based this bit on Sunderland? Have you based this bit on Arsenal or United? And to be honest, probably, but I couldn't necessarily name an out copy that we do as Ashwood City. Like Patrick Nolan, who's the chief executive, is a mixed match of, Mike Ashley. He's a bit of Ed Woodward. He's a bit of Stan Kroenke in the way that he operates sometimes. So it's real world football really helps. And I get your question, and we do get that quite a few times. How do you do it, and how difficult is it for you? But I can't imagine trying to write. We're coming up to 80 episodes. 80 episodes of something that wasn't grounded in some kind of reality, because I don't think I have the imagination to do that, to be honest.
Now, a lot of YouTubers talk about how your first 100 YouTube videos are a learning process. In terms of 80 episodes now, have you found that from episode 1 to episode 80, you've improved a lot as a writer, shall we say? Have you found a big step in what you did then compared to what you do now?
Yeah, I think so. I think I really appreciate people listening and enjoying the show, because a lot of the time I am still learning my ways, which is ridiculous, that I'm asking people to sit through that. But yeah, we sometimes will revisit episode 1. Episode 1 is chaos, and that was the idea. Chuck the listener in on transfer deadline day, when the coach has just gone on national radio and accused the chief executive of not fulfilling his kind of duties to bring players in. And we became kind of obsessed with not sounding like the Archers, no disrespect to the Archers, but not sounding like Radio 4. We never wanted any silence. We wanted it to be sort of 100 miles an hour. So episode 1's script is about 46 pages, which in writing terms would mean it should come out at about 40 minutes. It didn't. It came out around 24 minutes. So that's how quick fire it was. And all I cared about was gags. I just filled it with gags over and over and over again. But now, and sort of towards the end of season 1, I cared more about story. I cared more about how a joke will work over the whole episode, or what you would essentially a normal kind of sitcom would do. So yeah, I'm learning along the way. People have been very patient and they've enjoyed it. And, we've got brilliant cast and a brilliant director and a brilliant editor. So they always chuck in jokes and brilliant executions of jokes.
Now, what I want to know, my most important question today, who wrote the Ashwood City song? It is an awesome song. It's set to the song of Gotham.
I'm looking over the skyline of the city. The sunlight takes the sky away from dark. Ready for the battle of the day. So take me all the way to Dudley Park. The city of passion, 100%. A city of pride for everyone in Kent. We're bigger than Gillingham, they can't deny it. Ashwood City, oh yeah. How I think of glory days come by, oh yeah. Stood on the terrace with my steak and kidney pie. It's a good pie, yo. Like in 78 when we went oh, and back in 87 when we won the League Cup. The League Cup. The city of passion, 100%. A city of pride for everyone in Kent. We're bigger than Gillingham, they can't deny it. Ashwood City, oh yeah. Yes, it's a city of passion, oh yeah. 100%, 100%. A city of pride for everyone in Kent. We're bigger than Gillingham, yeah, they can't deny it. Ooh. Ashwood City, oh yeah. Yet in the middle of a stormy fixture, we won't stumble and we won't fall. We'll score a 90th minute header. City of passion, oh yeah, 100%, 100%. The city of pride for everyone in Kent. We're bigger than Gillingham, yeah, they can't deny it. Ashwood City, whoa, yeah. We need a city of passion, a city of passion, 100%, 100%. A city of pride for everyone in Kent. From Dover to Dartford, we're bigger than Gillingham, yeah, they can't deny it. Woo. Ashwood City, oh yeah. Yes, it's a city of passion, yeah, 100%, 100%. A city of pride for everyone in Kent. Some people don't. We're bigger than Gillingham, yeah, they can't deny it. Ashwood City, oh yeah. Ashwood City. Everybody singing with me. Ashwood City. Everybody singing with me. Woo. Ashwood City. Everybody. Oh yeah. Ashwood City. Woo. I'm talking about the days of Jerry Hardness, y'all. Ashwood City. Push on, super whites. Bring the cup back to Dudley Park, y'all. Ashwood City. Sounds good, don't it? Ashwood City. Love these kids, y'all. Ashwood City. See everybody singing with me.
That was written by Adam Jarrell. He plays Woody. He's the editor, the director. Adam's background is music and live music, and he's a brilliant songwriter, and as you can tell, he's a brilliant singer as well. The Ashwood City song, I didn't actually give him a big enough heads up in looking back. Like, I think he probably did it. He doesn't work at the place where he worked when he wrote it, so I can say this. I think he wrote it whilst he was at work.
Wow.
And he recorded it the next morning, and it went out probably the next day after that. Now what we do, like we had an episode recently called A Goal for Africa where there was a song, and I think it was Adam's idea to have a sort of a sport relief song, but I remember just hounding him, and I'm sure he was more than aware that he had a smash hit song to write, but I kept hounding. I would send him messages like, it's 4 weeks to go to sport relief, just so you know, just so that song's coming along nicely. Because I just know he's really, really good at it, and and part of me, I run the offensive, like I run the whole show, but a big part of me, he's just a big fan of Adam and wanting to hear what he's come up with. So he keeps it secret from me. He doesn't show me the lyrics until we're going to chuck it into the episode.
Hearing Kieran Brim do the rap during the Song for Africa song was amazing. I was in tears. I was on the bus on the way to work and I was in tears listening to this song at the end of the podcast. It was amazing how Patrick rushed around trying to get it sorted out, and all the fiasco with Jess trying to arrange a press conference, and then Patrick.
Do you know what? I that episode, I knew that Adam was working on the song, and he talked about a Kieran Broom rap, and I think he played me the instrumental of the chorus, and I was like, oh shit, this is going to be really good. And I'm going to have an episode that's good enough to prop up this song. So then that's the only time I think I've really felt pressure to write something good. Like I'm fortunate in that I don't really have to think about it that much. But this one I really thought about. I was like, oh, God almighty, I'm going to give it, I don't want to write the worst episode ever, and then this brilliant song is wasted on it. So yeah, I'm glad that, obviously I'm delighted that people quoted the song and how much they liked it and things like that, but I'm also glad that people liked other areas of the episode, because the song deserves it at least.
What I love about it as well is, it's almost like Patrick wrote it himself. Like, the song's so bad it's good. Yeah. You'd have thought Patrick sat down and wrote it himself. And like I said, the whole story with just giving him a bollocking about the song and trying to raise the press conference, and then Patrick outside doing people shopping and whatnot, it was hilarious. It really, really, really was. So that's one of my favourite episodes. It's up there with the transfer episode where Woody's in the board with all the scouts and stuff, and then you've got the...
Well, that one is based on Liverpool. When Fenway Sports Group first took over, they used their transfer committee, and supposedly it was a room of about sort of 26, 27, 28 people from the whole ladder of recruitment. So everybody from the sporting director down to sort of, down to sort of like localized scouts, which I just cannot imagine somebody went, what about Mo Salah? And they went, yeah, that's great. Like, I can't picture how that room would have worked.
In terms of the whole story, the whole process, who's your favourite character? Do you have one?
Do you know what? It kind of depends what I've written recently. I love Patrick a lot, but sometimes I do have to write episodes where it's a lot of Patrick, and then I end up loving Woody and Jess, and then I might write a lot of them and then end up loving the other ones. So I do have a huge affection for those main three. Sometimes an actor will come in for one of the peripheral characters and make me really like the character. Thomas Mitchells, who plays Theo Clinton, who's the chief player liaison officer, is brilliant. Like, really, really strong.
Is hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. And that inspired, like, his performance inspires the shit, if you know what I mean, that is thrown at him. So I like that.
Wasn't it an episode where it was his daughter's birthday and Patrick knocked on his door and made him come out of his daughter's birthday party or something?
Yeah. So he kind of he's a bit of a whipping boy at Ashwood City, unfortunately for him. But, he's a player liaison officer, so I would imagine that he gets a lot of that.
I mean, in terms of my favourite characters, I told you, I love Woody. Woody's my favourite character. I think he's so, so funny. But in terms of the dynamics of the show, I love Jess, but I love the Dan Watson, Woody and Patrick Nolan dynamics, the three of them together. It's so funny, because Patrick hates Dan with a passion. That's what it comes across.
Yeah.
You know, when Woody's trying to get Patrick in and he's trying to get the manager sacked. It's just the dynamic between them three is amazing. And the dynamic between Jess is also fantastic. You know, Jess is, she's been off this year a little bit, the last couple of episodes, but I'm a big fan of Jess. I love Jess. She's so funny. She scares, or even now she scares the bejesus out of me. You know, I wouldn't want to work under her because I'd be scared to get a tea on or something in case she's at me, because she comes across as a scary woman. I've had a couple of managers like that in retail in my real life, do you know what I mean? But Jess comes across as a fiery, scary, powerful woman. How I imagine Karen Brady to be, but on 15 cups of coffee. But Jess is also, I mean, I don't think there's one character that I really dislike. I love Kieran Broom. You know, I wasn't, more recently where he's had more and more airtime, I'm becoming a bigger fan. And the episode where they talk about, the test came back positive, Kieran. And you think he's got coronavirus, and it's like he's got chlamydia or something, wasn't it? And I was in tears. Yeah, the test is positive. Oh no, what do I do? Got to tell when you've been in contact. And it's chlamydia. It was just, Kieran is all, I mean, I've so many characters, I could sit all day tell you how much I love them all, but Dan Watson, Woody, Nolan, I mean, I just love the three of them together. It's so funny.
Thank you, mate. Thank you very much.
But in terms of Foot Manager, you're somewhat of a purist, shall we say. You don't play FM 14, you don't play FM 15, 18, 19, 20. You play the classic, arguably the best Foot Manager of all time, Championship Manager 01, 02.
Yeah.
Tell us how that comes about. Tell us what you did, how you're getting on, who you're playing as.
Well, I'm actually playing it on my phone, which sounds like it wouldn't be an enjoyable experience, but trust me, it's as enjoyable and as addicted as I always am. I'm currently playing as Union Berlin.
Wow.
They were in the second tier in Germany, and I've always kind of thought it's weird that Berlin don't have a big team. Obviously, Hertha Berlin are like sort of mediocre sized. So I thought I'd just set myself the challenge of making a sort of, put Berlin on the map. I think there was a guy in history that tried to do that before. So then I've got myself promoted. And to be honest, part of the reason why I chose Germany is it means I can get Maxim Tagalco without a work permit. So I've just won the Bundesliga for the second season in a row, but in Europe, I'm just throwing it away.
On the mobile, on the Android, on the iPhone, FM Touch or Championship Manager 01, 02 are incredibly popular. There's a lot of guys that I know that do play Football Manager or Championship Manager on their tablets, on their phones, because it's quick, it's easy, you get a season in on your freaking lunch break, do you know what I mean? So it's a lot more popular than you may believe. But Championship Manager 01, 02 is my favourite of all time by some distance. In the offensive, in season one, for a lot of the players, I just kind of needed filler.
That we'd made a few players up, sort of key players, but then the peripheral players were just like Tonton Zola Makuko, Jonas London, I think, was in there. There was somebody else. Might have been Lars Ivar Strand, just sort of like classic Championship Manager 102 gems. I just used without their permission and just chucked their name in the show.
Well, you hear Championship Manager, Foot Manager mentioned a couple of times throughout the show, especially when it comes to the transfer special. So in terms of the recording process, because you don't play Foot Manager much, are any of the guys on the crew, the cast, play the game at all that you know of?
I'm not sure, actually. Paul, who plays Patrick, he might do, or I might have made that up.
Have you thought about getting FM at all, or are you happy sticking to Championship Manager, the classic?
I do love the classic. Maybe it's a familiarity thing. The new Football Manager is brilliant, but it's almost sort of too brilliant for me sometimes. I find it quite difficult to sit on a game sort of going into hours. I like to kind of like pick it up and put it back down.
Exactly.
Whereas Football Manager, because there are so many features, there's so many sort of things that you need to sort of kind of like get in order. And then obviously you've got to apply some research, extracurricular stuff to make sure you're half decent at it. Whereas Championship Manager, I've sort of already got that info. Like I know who's decent and who's not decent and whatever. So I guess, yeah, I just enjoy myself being lazy.
Are you a football fan at all in real life, shall we say?
Yeah, I'm a big football fan. Yeah, I wouldn't say like I'm a diehard for a team. I support Exeter City, but you should always judge a supporter by how much they can dedicate their lives to the club. And I can't say that Exeter City have received that much of my dedication. I sort of see them at playoff finals, clap when they lose that playoff final, and then go home.
Well, Uri Geller, you must be a fan of his.
Yeah, Uri Geller. Yeah, I was at that speech, that weird Michael Jackson speech, albeit I was about 6 years old.
And it's ingrained in your memory, is it?
Yeah.
What am I watching?
Yeah, bizarre.
So there's a part of the show that I love now. This is called the 11 Spitfire questions. Now, they tend to be normally short, sharp answers, but as I want to get to know you a bit more, there's a couple of different ones in it. I've changed it about a little bit. But first off, Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Good shout. Coke Zero or Coke? Diet Coke is pure Coke. What do you prefer?
Diet Coke.
Yeah? What's your favourite takeaway?
Thai.
Oh, really? You like a Thai?
Yeah.
What's your meal of choice?
Oh, don't, because I'm going to say pad Thai, and that's really boring.
My wife loves a korma. I mean, how boring is that for me to get a freaking korma? It's basically yogurt and chicken.
Yeah, that's good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's not as bad as my answer, so that's good.
Exactly. Pad Thai is fun. I thought pad Thai. I like a pad Thai myself. FIFA or Pro Evo?
I just played a game of Pro Evo, and I'm still going to say FIFA. Sorry, Pez fans.
What's your favourite film?
Liar, liar.
Really?
Yeah.
You like a bit of Jim Carrey, eh?
Yeah, I do, yeah. I just watch it endlessly. I just think it's brilliant.
What's your favourite TV show?
Oh, that's a good question. I've ruined the quickfire format here, haven't I?
Don't worry, it's never quickfire. I call it quickfire, but it's never quickfire, so don't worry about it.
Do you know what? I won't tell you because I don't know, but I'll tell you a show I've watched recently that I really like is Succession.
I've heard of that. We've seen it. What's that
It's
about?
really good stuff. HBO drama written by Jesse Armstrong, who did Peep Show. Good stuff.
So, in terms of championship manager, who's your favourite championship manager on 0102 then?
Favourite player on there? Sergei Nikiforenko always does a job. Mark Kerr is obviously an absolute professional. But do you know what? I'm going to give it to Taribo West just because of the courtesy of being free.
He's a free transfer, isn't he?
Free, but also for some bizarre reason, absolutely more than willing to go anywhere.
Exactly. I remember it vividly as a child. Taribo was on a free transfer. Whatever league you go to, it could be the championship, the conference, is still joining. He didn't care.
But
it was awesome.
It will always say, like, Taribo West is delighted to agree terms with Rushton and Diamonds. Or whoever.
If you could have dinner with any three people alive or dead, who would it be?
If I could have dinner with them?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Or being locked down, a quarantine, whatever you call it. If you could have three people, who would it be?
Yeah.
So you could be really clever like go for Patrick Nolan, Jess, and Woody, couldn't you?
Oh, God, can you imagine that? Oh, no, I'm going to be thinking here for ages.
I should have pre-warned you, shouldn't I?
I'd probably go with... I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, so I'd probably go with Tolkien because I'd have a few questions and I'd just tick them off.
How much drugs he was on at the time?
Yeah. It wouldn't be that bit wouldn't be that interesting for the other two dinner guests. That would literally just be me and him chatting, and then he can go. I'm not really interested in anything else. Then I'd probably go with. God, you're going to do some editing here to close this gap.
Should we just go for Tolkien? Is that easy for you?
Yeah. Do you know what? I'd go Tolkien. I'd go. I'd probably go Jim Carrey.
Good shout, yeah.
Because I'm just a big fan.
Would you like a dinner with old Woody, Patrick Nolan, and Jess? Would that be a fun dinner for you? Do you think?
I think so, as long as they didn't turn on me. Yeah. If I could just observe quietly, if I was like a waiter.
Sit in the corner.
Yeah. Now,
in the offensive, there's quite a lot of swearing words. Woody likes to swear, so does Patrick Nolan, so does everyone else. What's your favourite curse word?
It's a bit boring, this, but my favourite is bollocks.
That's nothing wrong with it, bollocks.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I like that one.
So in terms of your profession, if you could, what other profession other than your own would you like to attempt, if you could?
I'd like to be a vet, but not one in the country, because that's basically just shoving your hand up, your arm up a cow's ass. It seems to be all they do. So I would sort of say I'm not doing it being a London vet, that would be awful. I put on super vet and I'm just completely besotted with the guy.
So if you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give him? What would you tell him to do or not do, shall we say?
Apart from meeting my wife at university, meet her and then don't bother with university, because I don't think that's not advice, by the way. That's just, I just found that I didn't really get anything out of it, and it kind of put my life on a hiatus that, when you go into the real world, it's quite difficult to get any kind of momentum.
How long have you been a writer for? Is the offensive the first big thing you've done, shall we say? No offence if it isn't. Is the offensive the first big thing you've done? If it's not, how long have you been doing the whole writing thing for?
Yeah, so I kind of written things since I was about 10, which I'm sure most people do, and then just carried it on. The offensive has probably been bouncing around since I was about 14, I would imagine.
Wow.
Yeah, a really long time ago, we kind of first started thinking about it. And then done a stage show and a feature film that's crap. And then the offensive. But I mean, it's most of my learning's done on the offensive, because, when you're younger and you go, I've got an idea for something, you write maybe 20 pages and you go, oh my God, I just wrote 20 pages. That's amazing. Whereas at the moment I write 60 pages a week. So there's more learning in this than the last, 20 years of trying.
I mean, if this is your first big thing, should we say, quotation marks, you do pretty damn well, because every week it just literally, the show's getting better and better and better every week. Mate. Are you getting much? Because we've had Luke Moore from the Football Ramble on the show. We've also had the classic football commentator, John Champion, the old Provo commentator for back in the day. You must be pretty happy the recognition you're getting now. The fact that even after just 80 episodes, you're getting Luke Campbell, John Champion, and others making an appearance on the show. Could you have imagined 80 episodes ago this is where it's going to end, or not end? This is where it's going to go, shall we say?
I think I'd be surprised that I would have done 80. Is the biggest shock. I don't think I would have been surprised, because ultimately, when you do start doing something, it's embarrassing, but you do probably have wishful thinking and you say, all these people are going to be in it and whatever. I probably would have hoped that various voices would appear in it. But I think the biggest thing is once you pick out a week of your life and you pick out an episode that dominates that week and how much work goes into it, everything from, even if it's just sending emails to cast or trying to promote it or doing whatever, just to know that myself and the team have been able to do that for 80 weeks is just something that's the thing that we're most proud of, really. And I think that's probably going to be the thing that we'll always be most proud of, because it's so easy to do 10 episodes of something and go, that was great, step back and leave it, and you barely scratch the surface.
That's every Football Manager YouTube ever. They do 10 episodes like I do, sack it off and start a whole brand new thing, rather than keep that momentum going. Now, with the likes of Luke Moore and John Champion, do you have any guest that would be who's your dream guest to get on the show, apart from Ronaldo or Messi, of course? Uri Geller,
yeah, let's get him on. I would say, I think Lineker is so embedded in the football community, and he does kind of straddle the areas we talk about. He'll kind of talk on Twitter about the sort of clash of cultures that's going on in football now, and you could argue, if you wanted to, that it was going on politically in Western countries as well. I think he's a good fit for somebody that would clash with our kind of characters. So I think I'd probably say Gary Lineker.
That's a good shout. Gary Lineker interviewing Kieran Broom. Oh, that'd be
nice.
In terms of the show itself, again, I mean, I love the fan corners on the show. You have the chairman of the Players Supporters Club that's always in the bar, pissed every time he calls in. That's always a really, really funny one. But the show itself, as I've mentioned before, and I'll mention it again, it is incredibly funny. If you haven't heard the show, believe me, you're missing out. We spoke there about there's not much, there's not a lot of football involved in the show. One of my favourite bits involving players was there is an episode where Ashwood are playing Rangers. And you've got KFC, you've got Kieran Broom, and you've got the new Australian lad, is it Chris?
Chris Well, yeah.
Chris Well. And you've got them sit on the bench talking about they want to go take Stevie G's hand. And then there's a whole thing about Chris Well tripping over on the icy floor and that. And that's what a lot of the football interaction is. Actually, it's not about the stuff on the pitch. It's just about stuff off the pitch. And we've seen a lot more of the players in season 2 of the offensive. Season 1 was predominantly around the backroom ball, but we are seeing more managers and more players getting involved this year. It's just the show is progressing so well, so quick. I mean, I know you mentioned that the show initially was a pilot for a TV show. Are you glad in hindsight that the show never went onto TV because you have a lot more, I'd imagine, creative freedom doing a podcast than you would do of doing a TV show, surely?
Yeah, definitely. Loads more. I mean, you know, we can say whatever we want, which is not that I know the other side of it. I've never been told by, you know, broadcasters or whatever what not to say, but it is a relief. But we don't overdo it. Like, if you want to see whatever all the people say, then you can just go on all the sort of lad accounts where all the banter is. Like, you can get all that kind of thing. So we do try and occupy a certain area of comedy, I guess. The best thing about podcasting is, and I say this in every interview I do, so I do apologize, is you can just say, we're at the Emirates, and you pump in the crowd noise and, well, not much crowd noise. And then you that's where that person is. That listener knows football and they know what the Emirates looks like. Do you know what I mean? I'm not designing a stadium in their head. It's not like some sort of fantasy landscape that I had to tell every detail. The listener knows the furniture of football so well that that's really easy for us to do. If I went with a fucking film crew to the Emirates, it would have to be signed off months in advance. I'd have to have extras rather than fans, because fans would just be chucking stuff at the cameras and swearing.
Couldn't go on the pitch and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
right.
It would just be, and I would say, right, same again next week, and it would be chaos. So in that respect, you know, we do talk about TV versions. I do have people ask about the show and all that kind of thing, and sort of threaten advanced talks. But you'd have to stay in the offices, and if that works, then that's a way of working. But it would be a step down in terms of writing, because I can't suddenly put you in, you know, Stadio Olimpico, which was like the first Europa League episode, is what we did. So I don't really have any interest in anything other than the stories and the characters that we've got now and the medium that we're using, which is podcasting. Any
plans for any potential tours to film episodes live in front of a studio audience? You've seen Peter Crouch doing his podcast. Any plans for that at all?
Do you know what's funny is a lot of people say this, and Adam, who's my other half in this relationship that is The Offensive, he really wants to do like stage show of The Offensive. I'm reluctant because it's so much work. And we very rarely squeeze in time to do all the things that we want to do with The Offensive. Like, we've never done any marketing before in our lives, not because we don't want to do it. It's just because we don't have the time to do it. Like, I will write the script on a Sunday night, Monday, and then sometimes a Tuesday morning. Then it's out with the actors until Thursday, and then it's in the edit until, you know, Saturday. Sometimes Sunday, which Stakhanov always loved that. Calling them through their roast dinner, asking them to upload it. So it's one of those things. I completely get the draw of it, and it would be amazing, definitely. But it's a lot of work, Yeah, it's one to think about, really. The other thing is we're all quite young, and they're playing older characters, so I'd ask for a leap of imagination from the audience as well.
There was no way would you expect Patrick to do like what Paul does, and Woody as well, and like Adam. You just wouldn't expect it.
Yeah,
The way
it's
they were,
crazy,
you
isn't
don't imagine. We couldn't imagine somebody else playing a Patrick or a Woody or a Jess, and neither of them would look like what you would think a 50-year-old Patrick's look like. Because I think as a pod, as you mentioned, the fact that you can be in an Azerbaijan hotel 1 minute and then be back in Ashwood the next is fantastic. Or be in a takeaway in Gillingham with Patrick getting abused 1 minute and then be in the bus the next. It's fantastic, and to make a TV show would take away, because you couldn't do that in real life, could you? You really couldn't. Now, have you had many complaints from, whether it be football fans or footballers and managers, anybody complain to the show about things that have been said about them or implications about them, anything at all, any feedback at all from any players, fans or managers at all? Other than Southampton fans?
Southampton fans, yeah. No, we haven't really. We'll kind of get sort of tweets will bounce around of goal gifs, and we'll say that we scored against West Ham, and people are like, "Oh, fuck off! No, you didn't." And it's like, well, this person doesn't listen to the show and is a West Ham fan that stumbled across this goal gif because it's landed on their timeline. So we'll kind of get stuff like that. I remember when we did. When we kind of did a storyline, because when I first started doing this, I basically said, let's just tackle everything in football, no matter what it is. Let's just not pretend that, sexism doesn't happen. Let's deal with it. Let's not make fun of it. Let's make fun of the idiots that are perpetrating it, and let's deal with it instead of just saying that it's this land of milk and honey. And we did an episode sort of about historical sexual abuse in the workplace and all that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, with Jess. Yeah.
And we kind of got, and I kind of talked to all the women involved in the show, everybody from Helena to Vic to everybody else, and we really worked on the scene in that how it was going to play out and what were the motivations of the women in the scene, because there wasn't a general consensus of how every woman should feel about this particular man's role in it. They had conflicting ideas, which is real life. Not everybody thinks the same thing just because they're the same gender. So we had probably 2 hours in the studio talking about it, thinking about it further and further. And we were all really happy with it. But we did get, for the first time ever, a few bits and pieces of feedback of people being like, oh, I wouldn't go there. Once it had aired, this was. And that kind of made us feel a little bit uneasy for about 5 or 10 seconds. And then you just get a flurry of tweets come in that are all really positive for it and thought that it was great. And then that completely erases the few sort of voices that worried us initially.
That's one of the episodes where I love Patrick most of the time, but then you get this odd episodes where his nasty side comes out of Patrick, don't you? And that's one of the episodes where Jess obviously goes to Patrick about historical sexual abuse against the ex-player, ex-legend of Ashwood City, and Patrick is not quite as reciprocated about it, tries to cover the whole thing up. And that's one of the episodes where you see a more sinister side to Patrick, much like when he goes to America and sees the owner in prison. You know what I mean? And Patrick can be a bit of a nasty character when he wants to be, can't he?
Yeah, Patrick's position is all about power, really. And I think it's one of those things where there's so many people in the world that their sort of exterior image might be great, but inside it's power driven, or their exterior image might be awful, and they've got the exact same power drive inside them that the people we like have. And Patrick, I hope Woody, I hope Jess, and I hope plenty of the characters do have light and shade in them.
I mean, you must like the idea that you get a bit of a Twitter trend going, hashtag Nolan out. That must be nice to see.
Yeah, that's the best bit for me. The feedback we get on social media. So I never had the plan of doing the club's Twitter account. I think after episode 2, or maybe it was episode 3, and I can't remember. I wish I knew the name of the person that tweeted it. someone just tweeted to the Offensive Podcast account, "Get that fat Tory nonce out of my club." And as soon as I saw that, I was just like, oh my God, what are we doing having some boring podcast Twitter account that just tweets the episodes live when we could have a club sort of acting sincerely and po-faced with their sort of goal gifts and their merchandise tweets and their announcements. And the replies that we get are just so much fun. Some of which we've incorporated in the show. Will often have Patrick read sort of negative tweet. Well, I think when he had chest pains and he was hospitalized, we tweeted that before the episode went out, like 5 or 6 hours before or something. And people responded with the reply, like, you know, we said that he'd been hospitalized and people were like, why did he drop his wallet on his foot? Or is he getting the dick removed from his forehead and all this kind of thing? And so then the following week, Patrick reads out the negative tweets that were targeted at him whilst he was hospitalized. So I love that. I love that bit. That's comfortably my favorite part, I think, reading the Twitter.
I mean, we've seen Twitter, as we just spoke about on the show, and one of the episodes I love is when Patrick creates his first Twitter account, and his first tweet is just Patrick Nolan.
Yeah.
You know, and that was hilarious.
The
and just like, what?
The joke we were going to do there is that's not only his first tweet, that's going to be his only tweet. Now loads of people have followed him and they keep tagging him in stuff and tweeting at him, but we're not really planning to do anything more. We just found it really funny that there's an account and it's just, he tweeted Patrick Nolan, the sort of Ed Balls approach.
Now, Ashwood City are actually in Football Manager. Some absolute legend has taken time out of his many days of lockdown and gone out and created Ashwood City and put them in Football Manager. Do you know anything about the team? Anything about the guy that creates them? How did it all come about?
He's done a brilliant job. He basically sent me the file. His name's @MUFC Tarrant. He sent me the file and said, you know, I've made this. If you want to be able to share it with people, we share it on the website. So if anyone wants it, they can follow our Twitter and they'll be able to download the Ashwood City team.
No wonder we find out the team that has been removed, been obliterated from the real-life football world that no longer or ever existed. What team was that?
In the show, it was Southampton.
Southampton, wow. Who chose Southampton? What's the beef for Southampton all about?
Yeah, I thought they deserved it. No, I chose Southampton. Somebody asked me this a few months ago, and I would say it's a compliment, and this is why. Southampton, at the time, this is 2 years ago, were not making any headlines, which in football is a good thing. So it felt to me like Southampton were never going to be a joke that we were missing out on.
That's a good shout.
It's got nothing to do with the kind of scale of them. If anything, in my head, Ashwood City are much bigger than Southampton. It was more that they kind of occupied a certain space in football that I wasn't necessarily going to point fingers at and laugh at. So to that, we chopped them out. However, in the early days, we felt bad and we mentioned their result in episode 6. We've since become a lot more hard-nosed and worse people, and now we just don't mention them at all.
I never knew that's why you didn't choose Southampton. And now you say that, it makes perfect sense, because you don't see Southampton, unlike a Newcastle, for example, or an Aston Villa with Jack Grealish or a Kyle Walker make the news. I never actually thought. I was wondering why it was so Southampton. And
because I mean, we could have done something like Bournemouth. Again, they occupy a similar space, but Bournemouth they're a bit more unique. Bournemouth, in that they've got this tiny stadium and everyone, they're the darlings of the Premier League, and everyone loves them. Again, this is 2 years ago. So yeah, that's why we chopped Southampton. To clarify, Southampton don't not exist in our universe. They're just, we picture them as being in the league below.
Ah, right, okay. I just thought they were like never existed. I wasn't aware that they were in the. I know they were mentioned very early on in the series, but I just assumed they were completely gone.
Woody mentions them also in episode 10, I think, or maybe 9. he mentions Pochettino when he first came to Southampton and didn't speak any English. And when I was writing that and when Adam and I were talking it through, it was more that, that's a perfectly reasonable thing for Woody to say, because in our world, they do exist. They're just in the Championship.
And in your world, Ashwood have also had a couple of unique players, real-life players. Can you name some of those players that Ashwood have had that just seem so obscure, so unreal? It's unbelievable.
Yeah. They've had David Dunn. They've had, I think they've had Paul Robinson as well. Actually,
who's the legend? That Patrick.
Danny Cadamatri.
That's the one, Danny Cadamatri.
Yeah, they've had him. They've had Danny Osvaldo as well, mostly because I just pictured them trying to handle Danny Osvaldo, who of course was at Southampton as well. Who else have they had? They've had Charlie Adam on loan. Yeah, they've had a few names.
It's amazing
they've done fairly
when you
well.
hear like a random name get mentioned. Oh, yes, the ex-Ashwood City legend, Danny Cadamatri. Like, what? Danny Cadamatri? But they're always obscure plays like the late 90s, early 90s, do you know what I mean? And I love it. I love it. I can't wait to hear more of it. I really can't.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Well, there we go. Another episode of Ben Meets, and that was one for the purists of the Ashwood City Fate. If I'm a season ticket holder on Patreon, if you haven't already and you do know about the show, I highly recommend you follow that Patreon. It's just a simple way of giving back to the show. I'm a proud Super White fan, and one of the benefits of that is you get the Ashwood City song. You also get like a little newsletter. You get the Discord as well. It's a good little addition to the show. It's a nice way of supporting the show to help keep the show running. So if you haven't done so, not only check out Ashwood City, the Offensive podcast, check out Joel as well, but also check out the Offensive Patreon as well. But anyway, Joel, thank you for coming on Body Tree. Give yourself a little shout out on social media.
Yeah, thanks very much, mate. You can find us at Ashwood City and at the Offensive Pod.
Without any further ado, I'm going to bid you all adieu. See you later.